lecture to talk about a little bit about my research in my curatorial practice, focus into two projects. My practice is an ongoing curatorial research entitled La Historia de las Montañas, which could be translated as the history of the mountains. And it is composed by two research axes that are structured around the process of emancipation, is one, and the creation of imaginations. I understand the latter, imagination, as structures of symbolic and material order that allow the organization and management of the life of living beings. In the last year, the research has focused in depth on the perceptual system of the human body and ways in which it could be expanded through aesthetic thinking. When I say aesthetic thinking, I am referring to literature, visual arts, cinema, music, and so on, any kind of artistic expression, let's say. It considers under the premise that if we continue to perceive the planet in the same way, then the imaginations as structures will end up being very similar to the structures that we have created so far. So for this lecture, I want to go through two projects in which I've been working and sharing some of the research. And at the end, I want to finish with a fragment of a text published in 2020, and that I think it is key for my ideas till now. So, the first one is the Montañas Submarinas El Fuego Hace Islas, which could be translated as From Underwater Mountains, the Fire Makes Islands. And it was possible thanks to Vigo, which is an independent institution in Sao Paulo, Brazil, and Cadiz collection, which is a collection focusing on contemporary art from all over the world. Also, we tacitly recognize that the imagination in which we live is exhausted and that from different coordinates, the human species is pushing to concretize all the ways of existing. This is not enough. Desire needs to be touched, the vital force, which is a concept developed by the psychoanalyst Suriel, which points out we will have to look for ways to access to the power of creation in ourselves, the birth of the drive movement, the vital force, that mobilizes actions of desire in its different destinies. By touching desire, which in this project of the Montañas Submarinas El Fuego Hace Islas is assumed as the reconciliation with movement, with constant movement. So we achieve the intersection between the emancipation and the creation of imaginations for the human species when we are able to reconcile with the constant movement, because that is my hypothesis of the research. One of the key reasons, because of the current crisis and all the socio-political situations all over the world, is because the structure, the imagination in which we are inhabiting, it is based through the idea of the stable and the idea of the binary, which is supernatural for the planet in itself. So this being the case, how can we bring our bodies closer to operate from constant movement, to create imaginations different from the current ones? From Underwater Mountains, Fire Makes Islands is a project that brings together different forms of aesthetic knowledge from around the world that are linked to strategies created by human beings to reconcile with the constant movement as aesthetic tools that allow us to access our vital force. Aesthetic tools is a concept that I've been developing through the research. So thinking and desire freedom beyond the imaginations based on the stable and the binary have a common denominator in various human communities. I refer to the materialization of these reflections as aesthetics tools, though that are works of art of different nature with the power to touch the desire. The intention with this project is to trace the presence of these strategies and tools in contemporary art practices, and by putting them in relation, then ask how do these works affect our bodies and the ideas of the possible. The project in itself functions as a refugee space, which is a concept developed by the curator Maria Loureiro, and which is a part of her essay Captura y Fuga, Notas para imaginar espacios refugio, which could be translated as Capture and Escape, Notes to Imagine Refugee Spaces. And I am quoting Maria. A refugee space, on the other hand, functions somehow from opacity, to preserve and care for the practices that take place there, practices that do not necessarily become public events, but exist as art. The refugee space seeks people who not only come to observe and contemplate, but who can effectively use, compose, and participate in its space-time. Drawing from this idea of refugee spaces, the Montañas Submarinas El Fuego Hace Islas is organized as 3 mountain ranges. The first contains 2 islands, the exhibition in Sao Paulo and a video screening program in Santo Domingo in the Dominican Republic. The second is a single island, a publication that compiles, shares, and translates reflections by linguists, curators, and writers who have been key in the research till the moment. And the third and last is an underwater mountain island in itself, a public programming of conversations focusing on the creation of imaginations in the human species. The works in the exhibition at Pivot explore the link and the potential between contemporary aesthetics touch and the generation of increasingly opaque subjectivities. The exhibition is physically organized as many nuclei, where through each reflection an artist from different coordinates of the planet converge. Half of our body is submerged. Absorbed by this threshold space, we pay attention to every small sensation. Unexpected connections emerge, and with them, we start to wonder. Everything seems possible. How come we haven't considered this before? Julius Kohler, which is the author of these 2 photographies, known for his actions, objects, and text on the anti-happening, the anti-picture, and his Universal Cultural Futurological Operation, UFO series, developed a practice concerned with imagination as a way of living out the potential of existence. In particular, in Universal Cultural Futurological Operation series, he uses real commonplace objects as predefined program for aesthetics operations. In Demonstrative Cultural Situation 1 and 2, from the UFO series, which is these 2 photographies, made in the 1989, Kohler generates a catalytic image. What appears to be an object reflecting light in the air is a portal connected to the artist's hands through a sort of magnetism. Curiosity makes us stop in the non-space to the point of being almost hypnotized, triggering a drive towards concentration, attention, and deceleration, and making us perceptive to Kiran Subaria's flying exercises. Among many other things, Subaria's practice consists in creating paradoxes through the use of humor and the manipulation of everyday objects by subverting their form and function, like we all do in our dreams. In Flight to Rehearsals, which is the title of this video work, made on 2003, there are repeated attempts to overcome gravity, being able to fly for brief periods. As the flight tries to take us to another space, new perspectives begin to destabilize us. As the flight tries to destabilize us, and we ask ourselves what type of fiction we are witnessing. The flight rehearsals involve slow processes that rely on the constant exposure of possible ways to change our body's abilities, such as in Jess Fan Diagram 12, which is the title of this artwork, made in 2020, from the series of the same name, in which the artist investigates modifications in the human body. Fan's practice creates speculations that draw on the intersection between biology and identity processes, paying special attention to the choreo systems generated between the human body's biological agents in their interaction with the surrounding environment. Its aqueous materiality, in visual terms, allows the organic geometry of diagram 12 to appear in constant expansion until it becomes ossified. Once again, the sensation of suspended hands reappears, this time attracted by a transparent element that captures our attention because it looks like it is going to fall at any minute, giving way to another aqueous materiality, triggering, therefore, a cycle where we become aware that we inhabit a transition, as highlighted by Juno B. and Jonas Van in Quebranto. This is a video work, and I will show you some skills. This is an artwork made in 2021. So we are inhabiting a transition in which we can not only create ourselves, but also generate other possibilities of collective existence, in the same way that we were created by dreaming exercises of cellular dimension, which is part of the reflections that the artists state in the artwork. In their practice, Van proposes monstrosities as a fictional narrative, whilst Juno B makes use of mutations. Both reflections converge in Quebranto, a work that generates another catalytic visuality. This time, eyes are the converge in Quebranto, are the access to it. If in colors, photographs, it is the non-space that captures our attention and incites us to float. In the work of Juno B and Van, it is through cycles and the threshold between the courage to open your eyes and the zigzag movement. In the accelerated rhythm of contemporary everyday life, paraphrasing Marta Poncarcina, which is a writer from Puerto Rico, and this is a part of an essay that is part of the reader publication in the exhibition. It is by blurring the typical outlines of our corporal abilities that we can train our senses to perceive that which we are not used to distinguishing. The exhibition calls us on floating as a possible way of reaching the expansion of the human body's perceptive system. Its definition is particular. On occasions related to our bodies, it means the ability to remain balanced on a liquid or gaseous surface. On occasions referring to things, to float implies movement in the air, generating waves. It is this latter instance that it is of interest to this exhibition section. The waves are directly linked to flexible concepts, such as multiple notions of time and ways of visualizing it, to which their irregularity and the spiral movement of Peruana, Shell Money #1, which is an artwork made by Kaloy Javini in 2015, make reference. Islands of limestone and coral, the submarine mountains, are located at the junction between tectonic plates, form the geography that originates Peruana, a coin object recontextualized in the work of Kaloy Javini, which materializes position, presupposes the identification and generation of concepts that move in ways, encompassing the combination of necessary abilities to live in different imaginations with the same body, as suggested in Larissa Machado's work, which the title is in reseña portuguesa. Senti uma leve brisa, depois veio o vendaval. O erro virou acerto, eu acerto. The strong wind came, and the wrong idea transitioned into something true. So, whose first photograph shows a triangulation between gaze and hands configuring a portal that gives way. In the second image, to a body in constant movement, mutating as many times as necessary. For Machado, the photo, in fact, it is only a witness as well as musical theater known as Dominican Dembow. The most recent evolution of the technology used by communities, maroon communities, to dismantle imaginations and create odors in the insular technique. Nothing supernatural, said technology is made up of sonorities and active listening. The karstic relief, the soil which holds the memory of waters against which the wind makes sounds, has led the maroon communities to materialize the futuro, a wind instrument made with the shell of a snail, that now continue with the Dominican Dembow, of which Leo RD is one of its main producers. Feliciano de Duray used to say that you can't always see the wind building the landscape, but it does build it. And that author, which is a Dominican writer, it is part also of the reader for the publication. And I can show you a little bit of the piece by another 3 minutes. So the piece that we are looking at now is an artwork made by the artistic collective Archivo Magno, which is as well as being a collective is in itself a tool that witnesses through its practice a course of an evolution of cosmogony to which they contribute, often by proposing artworks that allow, in one way or another, the body to rehearse. O que dirán as telas amar, which is the title of the work that could be translated of what the stones will tell to Mark. It was commissioned for the exhibition. It is made of several different parts, each of them making a mark in space. So the table, which is a kind of a table game on the ground, and also contains some sonorities artifacts in relation to how Sao Paulo is a city that is above a lot of rivers, but because of the speculation into the gentrification process, the people don't really realize. And also the words that are here, it is y a una ética mineral, which is like we need a mineral ethic in relation to the human processes of the colonization of Mars by a human being. which we all know that we are still operating through this idea of temporal uses. I mean, when some space it is not anymore functional for our purposes, then we will leave and go into another space to repeat the same logic. So, would you dare to suspend yourself? To inhabit wavy concepts for long periods? To inhabit wavy concepts for long periods allows our bodies to gradually go into shock. And once that happens, we cannot go back to the previous stage. The works in this exhibition seek to provoke our perceptive system to suspend, to flow, and generate short circuits. And at the same time, the works themselves extend these short circuits to make us aware of other ideas of the possible, to touch desire and reconcile us with constant movement. Duto Ardono, which is the author of the performance that we are looking at, is an artist interested in using sound to understand the relationship and paradoxes between the human species and the concept of time, proposes in variation and improvisation for Harmonia Progressive, a performance art which the first actualization, as Duto refers, was made in 2017. An action that gives body to concept of improvisation and variation in relation to the structures. Each time it is shown in an exhibition, the work becomes an object, as described by the artist himself. Because this is what they are, autonomous versions of the work. Using voice, the performance randomly changes the intonation, tone, and range while pronouncing in Harmonia Progressive, which alongside the movement in space allows the audience to perceive the possibilities of improvisation and variation in structures, not only on a one-on-one scale, but also collectively. So you have 3 groups of performers, each one of them saying in Harmonia Progressio, and the 3 groups have autonomy to change the tone, the tone, the intonation, and the range. It is important to say that the work is also what happens to the performance and those of us who witness the encounters between them and Harmonia during the preparation of the work. Due to our system of educational training, a relationship with improvisation and variation is timid or overly determined, resulting in a short circuit whether we perform or experience this performance. In a similar way, another short circuit takes place when we watch Kartik Pandyan's Atlas, which is a video work. This is just a still of how it was installed in the exhibition. It is an artwork of 2012. Our retinas are confronted, as well as our ears, with the main notion of movement through images that cannot be easily connected to specific geographies. The stimulus not only activates a sensory delocalization, but also, by making use of opacity, contributes to the collapse of the narratives within which we exist. Narratives that have been created by Western visual culture to build socio-geographic advantages, such as of the Middle East for those of us who live on the American continent. It is fitting to include here a quotation, slightly paraphrased, from Olivier Bardot's essay entitled Towards Real-Speaking Cinema, a Caribbean Hypothesis, in which he advocates for a cinema that is able to, and I am quoting, to widen the spectrum of the speaking image to forms of matter, environments that spoke from assembles and alliances between existence and phenomena places at the margins of the scene of dominant human representations. This expanded spectrum of the speaking image is evident in the majority of works in this exhibition, but most directly in Pandian and in Nadia Hovink's Circanov Future series, in which the ocean, far from being a frontier or a mere repository of dangerous living beings, is represented as a geographical place on our planet that engenders imagination structures, both symbolic and material, that would allow living beings to live their life on all scales in a way that is fundamentally different from our imaginations of today. Take any idea of the human imagination structure in the world as we already know, and put them in the ocean. They will most certainly end up broken or diluted because there is no place for the rigid in the water. When the domesticated body of the human animal is in touch with the ocean, their system of perception irremediably enters a short circuit, the most intense short circuit that can be experienced. Metamorphosis is Suriel. Emancipation is already in progress. Also, with the realm of speaking images as expanded the spectrum of the possible, we have Madeline Jimenez and Bill's Jardín de Aclimatación. Es posible reconstruir el mito, like a acclimatation garden. It is possible to reveal the myth, which was an artwork also commissioned for the exhibition. And it is a group of bodies in process, which, by inhabiting a transition, manage to exist beyond the geometry of dots and lines in space. The work is composed of 10 pieces, and for this version of the project, 4 are presented here. It reveals the strategy used by Jimenez and Thiel to make our perceptual system aware of constant movement. The creation of structures within a materiality to which we do not attribute mobility, the stainless steel. However, in the installation, they dance, and by insisting on dancing, they give shape to parts of the body that decide to speak in order to be represented, as Margaret would say, moving away from narratives as much as it is necessary, once again mutating and this time reaping what was ossified into waves. And one of the things interesting is that in this image you have one of the pieces by Madeline and the piece by Taloy Habini, and how the constant movement is conceived by an artist from this part of the planet, and Taloy, which is from Oceania, from Solomon Islands. In Esferas da Insurreição, Notas para uma Vida Não Cafetinada, by Suriel, argues that with this degree of expropriation of life, an alarm signal is triggered in our subjectivities. The drive is then set in motion, and desire is called up, open to act. And when the impulse has successfully taken over, a collective work of thought creation tends to burst in, which materialized in actions seeks to make life persevere and obtain a new balance. This last section of the exhibition focuses on the one hand works created to enable our perception to float, and on the other hand on works that bring us closer to collectivities who seek to make it possible. Muamba Groove Series 3-5, a work by Vanessa da Silva on 2020, is a movement-inducing instrument. It is what we see when the acontecimiento, like happening, happens. The moment when the artwork placed on someone's body begins to work. During the first few seconds, those who witness the event are likely to bear such thoughts. I hope the object doesn't fall, or I will be able to move so diaphragmatic with how this works. However, after being exposed for a while longer, we may begin to reflect on the way that the object is able to trigger interesting movements. Our limbs, both the performance and the public, start to move in waves, and gradually we go along with it. Luan Diaz, which was the performer that did the happening with this. We go with Luan Diaz with the instrument, and we contaminated by Diaz. A prophecy for moving differently, something that Jess Fan, who is interested in body modifications and the destabilization of binary categories, makes clear in their work Diagram 11. Achieving a sort of corporality that is made of multiple materialities which coexist, however, without the need for labels. In turn, the work Delirio Basante by Noara Quintana, which was another work commissioned for the project, whose practice focuses on the materiality of everyday objects and the indices of historical relations in the global south, suggests indirectly oscillation is a quality rather than a random misfortune. Swinging is a novel concept that moves in waves, soft and cyclical movement that always returns to the point of origin, even if not the same origin as before. Because during the interval, things were moved, collided, and broken. The memory of the event is evident in artworks like The Poida Agua Ateja by Gilson Black, commissioned also for the exhibition. An artist whose practice draws on fiction, enchantment, theory, and weight. These conceptual structures are also present in the practices of Colin Smith, who reflects on the everyday possibilities of imagination. In Soldier Work, which is a video work, and this is a still work, she generates visualities in which contemporary debates about the creation of older structures that enable life are articulated. The film's title points to the intrinsically ephemeral nature of communities that are constituted for the defense of unco-opted desire. The awareness of the ephemeral produces a particular attunement between the situation and the moment and gives rise to a relationship of reciprocity. Paraphrasing Jasna Yalena Aguilar, in a certain scenario to come, stability and the binary will not organize our ability to perceive. Provoking this picture is one of the common purposes among those of us who make up the Seamounts project, the Underwater Mountains, Fire Mix Islands. And the second project that I want to share with you is the Current. It is a fellowship for research by TVA 21 Academy in Ocean Space. So the title for this project will start on January 23rd. The title will be Otras Montañas, las que andan sueltas bajo el agua. And it is a 3 years project. If you walk the Caribbean by the sea, you will realize that in reality, there are no islands, but a succession of mountains between waters. We inhabit the slopes and valleys of submarine mountain ranges. Older mountains, those that are loose under the water, which is the translation of the title into English, it is the conceptual framework on which the development of the current in the Caribbean region will revolve. Also, it is a geographical area whose body of water is extremely present in the social history and geopolitics of the human species. Its mountains have also played a fundamental role in thinking about emancipation processes because of the Maroon experience. The current in the Caribbean intends to contribute to the emancipatory processes developed in the region that have sought to bring us closer to the ocean. From the high mountains where the air allows life to the older mountains, those that are loose on the water. The project will have focus on three axes. The first one, aesthetic artwork created in mountains above sea level to get closer to the other mountains, the underwater. The evolution of the ocean body in the region, both singular and continental, and walk in the Caribbean Sea. The first axis will allow us to approach those strategies, tools created by communities that have thought of freedom outside of the imagination of the Western world, which is based on the stable and the binary. And starting from the premise that these strategies and tools will bring us closer to inhabiting the Caribbean Sea again, since they were aesthetics practices that sought to reconcile the human body with the constant movement / the ocean. Understanding how they are still present today and continue their activation will allow us to contribute to expanding the perceptive system and maintaining rare subjectivities, opaque subjectivities, in the face of the co-optation of the imagination of human times, and to support the creation of other ways of living in relation to all the living beings. The second and the third axis seeks to contribute to the human species that inhabits the geographical space called the Caribbean, strengthen its relationship with it. Many of us who live in these coordinates do not know the history of the geographical formation and the geological evolution of the body of water to which we belong. This axis considers a series of projects that bring us closer through the visualization of what the insular and continental Caribbean has been like at different times in the geological history of this area. Likewise, it will also seek to approach the underwater mountains of the region to understand if the tools created in the mountains above the surface of the water will allow us to inhabit and be able to walk in the Caribbean Sea. And to finish, considering some of the things that we told yesterday during the talk, I want to share a fragment of a text that I wrote between May 2019 and June 2020. This part of the text is entitled Thinking from the Journey. Thinking the journey, thinking from the journey. Thinking from the journey not by the action per se, but rather by its main components. Awareness of the ephemeral, wandering, knowledge trafficking, and relations management. And how these four factors can offer a possible methodology and strategy to operate nowadays. The awareness of the ephemeral is what makes a displacement a journey. You are not a journey, you are on a journey. It is a finite movement defined by time. The awareness of the ephemeral produces a particular attunement between the situation and the moment and generates a reciprocal relationship. This is different from the one-sided and abusive relationship that results from awareness of the temporal in the fields of modes of production. When this unilateral relationship ceases to be functional, then it forces the operator to move elsewhere, tirelessly repeating this dynamic until it's worn out. Wandering, on the other hand, is the establishment of an essential doubt, to know oneself outside the conventional frameworks of functioning, to discard what is safe, and to bet into on different ways of doing and operating. To err is the act of thinking about the route we are taking while reflecting, discarding straight roads and opting for the curious. It is opposite to the concept of productivity of the socioeconomic system in which we live. It relies on new logics developed from what it is considered unproductive. Wandering is a commitment to experience, to doing, to endless drifting. The third factor, knowledge trafficking, refers to our conscious or unconscious action of thinking and reflecting regionally and inside the very terms of life experience, but outside the radar of colonialism, with how these ideas being filtered through the neoliberal framework. The goal is not to find better things, but to observe and assume a repository of collective knowledge. In this type of traffic, morality is fundamental. Through its knowledge of the immediate social cultural environment that has become a collective historical memory is transmitted. Perhaps the particularity of morality versus writing is precisely that the former is stimulated and occurs, the first one occurs simultaneously with other actions, while writing requires doing only that activity in physical terms. While on a journey, we think with and about the other person. Relations are managed with a logic that relationships require mutual real knowledge. This concept also contemplates ways of doing, hence its closeness to knowledge trafficking and wandering. In the Caribbean region, with its unique socio-economic realities, we should not necessarily think in terms of the Western academia, where knowledge is compartmentalized for exploitation. Our context demands that we think differently and produce knowledge from the relational, from the interconnected multiplicities of being, knowledge, and value, as stated by Edward Rizan. And that's it. I don't know if you want to comment or ask me something.
Parts to it. But the essence I gather from the presentation speaks to what you're trying to investigate, and it's an investigation through your analysis of works about Nigerian artists, looking at new ways of thinking, ways of sharing ideas of understanding who the artist in space and time. So it almost feels as though it's a journey of investigating the ephemeral or changing movement. But and so what I'm getting to is something that is more experiential in terms of these presentations. So it's not just about the tactility of the piece or the visual resonance of the piece, but in being involved in experiencing the work in several forms pieces, yes. But whatever, there was one that I saw and I wondered, outside of having this stage performance, how then you as a viewer could immerse in these pieces through the experience? Was there that opportunity? Would that have been a part of, to get the same sensibility as the artist that were there moments and times in some of these four parts of collaborative participation with
Yes. Both performances are really like happening between the performers, let's say, and the performers are all over the place. And they start to suddenly at some point, I am walking, and at some point I start to say in, and I will be walking around the exhibition space. And also for the Montañas Submarinas and Forwase Islas, it was pretty important, the space, the exhibition itself, the exhibition space itself. Because once you atmosphere, let's say. And many of the artworks are also like contaminating between them. Exactly. So, like for example, the Leo piece is like an open.
I was just wondering if you would want to have the slides back up. It kind of triggers some of the thoughts of what it is.
Well, I didn't understand just now when you said that the works are, did you say contaminated?
She said that right, but I
I'm
think
wondering
There's a
if then-
spillover into
Right, because the word contaminated might
Read
so
differently.
read
Yeah.
in one particular way, or as opposed to
but
participatory.
they're interacting.
Or interacting.
Interaction between work or there's I wouldn't even say a fusion. but
Yeah,
there's
so I
some
want
kind of
to really get specific meaning.
I don't get it.
Okay, so while you were explaining how the work existed in the spaces, you said they were so positioned so that they contaminated each other. But Philip was responding to that to say contamination can read differently than what it is that you're actually wanting to have us understand. Is it that you're saying the works they kind of use or co-create something else, they create another kind of experience by virtue of how they're positioned?
Yes, I mean the project in general it was planned to really make to flow at some point the perceptual system of the human body, to really understanding how our perceptual system function and how we can trigger at some point. So, and each of the artworks in the exhibition they play a certain and a specific role in that subject.
It's sort of like a sensory role. Right?
Exactly. So because of that, of the thing with the lights and here because of the pictures, the space in general it was more darker, and then you have like the sound pieces going in contact, for example, with this piece, and you have on this way the sound piece by Leo, then you hear the river and the piece by Leo at the same time. And then you have like this, the video work by Karthik. It is super intense. So it is always like playing with your perceptual system to really try to suspend it at some point. And in that way, then you can access to certain unconsciousness process, let's say, and
experiencing the work.
exactly, and then you can get it. For example, all the ideas that the artists are talking about. It's like how I can try to build you only in this atmosphere and experience really the ideas, not only as something that is being said or shown as a visual images, but really to really get it.
But the reason I mentioned that is because, for instance, I remember Dr. Bouquet had a question about how the DNR was curated in terms of the juxtaposition of sound words, in terms of their proximity to each other, and how the sounds lead into it. So, but that's a different sense that you have from the sense that I imagine you have.
What she has is a one thing.
Right.
Technical.
So I'm trying to figure out exactly
One shouldn't.
and one should. So that's it. But I think Dr. Bouquet may have would more use the word contamination.
Yes.
No,
Right. So that's what I'm saying.
and also because with all the artists and the writers and all the people involved in the project, not only in this exhibition but also in the screening program in Santo Domingo and the reader publication, we are people that are researching into these topics, but from different perspectives and with a lot of older ways of, for example, this work by Taloy Javin, it is talking about spiral time. And in the Caribbean, for example, we have another ideas of circularity times, or maybe an ellipse, like an ellipse time. And yeah, like this, it was together. And then in Brazil, they have this idea of enchantment, and then this idea of encrucijada, which is also talking about time. So the project, the artworks in itself, they were always, all of them, going into the same thing, but from different perspectives. So the contamination, it was the best way to really strong the ideas that we wanted to transmit and to share with the public.
So in the curation of an exhibition of this nature, you were part and parcel of this experience? You were part of this experience?
Yes, it was an architect to do the museographical things, but my bachelor degree is in architecture as well. So we work pretty close. And I've been researching into this since 2014, so I really know how we can, deal with the perception of certain aspects and how we can translate into a gallery, into an exhibition space. And then being with the installation process, then we can, maybe this artwork should be more in this way. And then with the light as well, how we can contribute.
So how years ago was the voice of the artist in not exhibition outside of them presenting the work, but in terms of that same conversation of the work in the space, how was that managed?
Most of them, they already have like a specific idea of how this work should be. So, for example, this is by Carolina Jimenez, so it should be done. So we share the photo of the space and also the blueprints of the entire exhibition. So all of them can have an idea of what is going on, and also they have access to all the other artworks that will be part of the exhibition. And some of the artists living in Sao Paulo, they were able to came exactly and see what is. And for example, this one, they are two. The photos are by Larissa, and the video is by Jonas. They are from Brazil. And for example, Larissa, she was thinking into a textile, like a fabric. No, we should print the photos on a fabric. Yeah, on fabric. And then the team produced the artwork in the textile. When we get the artwork, it's like, I know this is not working. So we called Larissa and checked it, and then she was able to really get an idea of what is going on with the rest of the artworks and what was better for her photos. And also the video, it was supposed to be like this, in this kind of screen. But then when we installed the screen where it was supposed to be, we realized that it doesn't work with the flow of the space. And yeah, so then we switched. But yes, this kind of project, it is always talking with everybody involved. It isn't, it's easier when you have to only pick some artworks and then install by your ideas of what should be. But the research is not about that. So for me, any project is an opportunity to really rehearse also the ideas in the research, in the investigation. Because if not, it doesn't make sense for me. It is like that. Come on, I'm talking about circular things and about transition and inhabiting transition, and then I want to produce an exhibition with a certain idea of how you should move around the space. So this one, for example, you can start from this entrance or this entrance, and you will get the wall text, let's say, is like they don't have a certain, like this is the beginning and this is the end. And so yes, it is like it is only the result of many years researching and then being able to have time and support for sure to do this kind of.
Gina, how many artists were in this exhibition, and were they mostly from the global south?
Yes, there were 19 artists. Yes, 19. And most of them are from the global south. Yes, but for example, Kartik Pandyan is from US, from Los Angeles, but from Egyptian family. And then Julius Kohler is from Europe, Eastern Europe, East Europe. And Antonio Ole is from Angola, Arquivo Martin is from Brazil, Beatriz Santiago from Puerto Rico, Biarritz from Brazil, Colin Smith from US, Dalisa Montes de Oca from the Dominican Republic, Dineo Sechego Papi from South Africa.
So would you have come across these artists? How did you, I mean, are they people whose work you would have seen at other art exhibitions, or how did you find them?
Yeah, they are, I've been working with this for many years. That is one hand. So I have been looking at certain artists that we share the common interest, let's say. And we are having conversations since a couple of years ago, like Nadia Holmes, for example. And that my practice is always like, if you see my CV, it is repeating names everywhere, because for me, it is like a continuation of conversations. It's not like this is a new one and this is a new one. That is not about it. So, and the other thing is that Pivo and Cádiz invite me because of my research, but to also research into the Cádiz collection and to research in the Brazilian context. Because I have been having interest in going, go to Brazil, specifically to the northeast of Brazil. And so yes, it was like a mix of, and many of because of my background into architecture, when I started the research, then I know in the tropical and the subtropical areas around the planet, we are having certain similarities into producing certain ideas of artworks, let's say, of art. So yes, I was checking, even when I started research into the Cádiz collection, I want to check into Indonesia, for example, Duto is from Indonesia, and I want to check East Europe and Bhutan. I have certain geographies that I have been interested in.
I have wanted to ask yesterday also, who are you curating for? Who are you working for? Who is your audience, your public, your stakeholders? Who are you curating?
I think I work for most people as I came to talk. And I always think when I realized that I was losing abilities to talk with my own and with my mom about what I am doing, and they were the people that teach me the things that I really do now, then I switched and I decided to go into other ways of practicing my, approach my curatorial practice. So yes, in my case, and because also of my visual studies ideas, I mix everything. Those are artists that came from cinema, music, and visual arts property, the linguists, the writers, people from biology that came together, and yes. So my public is as much people as I can reach out. For sure, it is, you have to have a conscience of how the artwork itself works and how I can contribute to the artists in those projects and the researchers in this kind of project to getting more exposure and that kind of things, but also how to expand the ideas of what they are doing. In the case of Taloi, for example, if you read the sheet that they have in the collection, they are talking about economical issues in Solomon Islands after blah, blah, blah. And then you say, okay, come on. What kind of materials are being used? Why this certain way of installing this? Why the gradient between the artwork? Why the spiral is down and not getting up? You know, all that kind of things. And then talk to Taloi, check into another complex in the Solomon Island, and then you say, guys, this is about temporality and stuff. Not only about the issues because she's using the marijuana, which is a coin. But it is a coin because of a lot of energy invested by the earth and the water to produce this certain material and because of that, the indigenous population gave the value as a coin in itself. But even the creation of the coin, it is time in itself. So the value is the time. So, and you know, that kind of things is also pretty important to this kind of practices. Yes.
What did you point out, because I know you've done some workshops as well, like how does the curatorial practice function in something that's like an activity, a meeting, that's a little bit different from like a space and, you know, artwork in the space. How would you expand, or how would you recommend for curators to expand into like workshops, other things?
Well, I think, I don't know if recommend, but I can talk briefly about how the workshops function, which Jamaica was part of one of them. I decided to, instead of I want to talk with as many people as I can, and where the people goes in the Dominican Republic. What is a common place for them? It is the yard, the garden. Okay, what do we have, like a public garden in which I can do something more ephemeral instead, and more even with budget, low budget, let's say. So I realized that the National Botanical Garden in the capital city, they have a lot of public and a lot of people go to them, you know, because it is pretty close to the everyday life. I am not inviting you to the Museo de Arte Moderno, which is a beautiful institution and building, but it feels, you know, like this is for a specific type of people. So that was the first thing, like think really on what kind of public I want to reach out and where those public feel more comfortable. And then the other thing is who artists are working into something that is close to the people as well. You know, like you using the storytelling strategy, so it is pretty common and present in the Dominican everyday life. You know, everybody is always talking, even if they don't know you. And the other thing is using like a common samples at some point. For example, the last workshop was to do kite, that we say chichiguas. And everybody likes to do chichiguas, you know. And it is also an object that you can have adult adults, children, young people, like all over, all the ages, let's say. And yes, that is, I think it is really to whom you want to talk at a certain time and how you can really, because I think we don't have to evangelize. The people already know what they want and how they want to build it. So the idea is to become with, okay, I have this other way of going through this. And it is pretty nice, the workshops, for example, it is allowing us to be in contact with a wide range of people from the Dominican society, from the capital city, which has 4 or 5 million, 4.5 million of people only in that city. And the last one, it was mostly 45 people. And at the first time, at the first 30 minutes, you feel the tension because it was people from the LGBT community, and there was a family, like you feel like conservative spirit, let's say. But then after 1 hour and a half, they were working together, and that is something that you will never be able to have in other contexts. So I think the workshops from the ambulatory perspective is like a table in which I am trying to build, okay, where I will build the table and who will guide us to deal with the table and through which object we will have any interaction.
The exhibition is like, it's not like a hierarchy, it's like what is appropriate for my individuals.
Yes. It is a lot of work. It could be easier if I go with the contemporary art rules, let's say. But I think it's not efficient for my interest. So yeah, I have to create always. Yes.
Would you define your practice as a form of activism?
Us?
A form of activism.
Is your practice a form of activism?
I think I define my practice as I work as a curator and I am a researcher. Yes, because I am a researcher, and then the curatorial practice begins to really pay attention of what is going on in a certain community and what do you think it is important for them, for us to talk or to be in touch or to see or to read.
Your work, I can understand Petrola's question about activism because it seems like an intervention. It feels like an intervention for bringing awareness to it.
No, and I am coming from left parties. I've been involved into the politics with big capital. We have capital letter, let's say. I was in many voluntary work and that kind of things and so on and so on. But I don't see the difference between doing this and going into the deputy chamber. I think the politicians and the public the politicians, they are also artists, and we are all artists at some point, and we have certain ways to communicate our ideas and our reflections. So yes, I have a pretty political concern in my whole practice because of that. I am researching into emancipation and how we can contribute to build older imaginations as a word system in itself. But yes, I don't see the difference.
Thank you, Yina, for that presentation. Thank you, everybody, for coming. today, in terms of Impulse, our project, we will be having Joanna Castillo continuing her workshops with students. And next week, Friday, we have kind of an open studio to show what the students have been working on. So you will just follow our social media to find out more about what's happening. We haven't settled on the time and location just yet, because it might be a public component to her final presentation. So we'll keep you posted.
And also, if you want to get access to the reader of this exhibition, it will be launched on November 9, next week. It will be like an ebook, and it is translated into Brazilian Portuguese and English as well. So, and if you go to pivo.com, I think, Pivo, yes, you can have more info in relation to the project.
Would it be good if you shared that, she can post it on the post so that it would be accessible, because it's still part of the same project.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank
you.
So,